Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by the Hockey Podcast Network, as well as DraftKings. Make sure you use promo code THPN when you visit the DraftKings Sportsbook app for great odds and opportunities. We're here to preview the Pittsburgh Penguins, Minnesota Wild. That game is coming up on Saturday night, and it's a matchup that we have not seen since January 14th of 2020. And why was that game significant? Because the Penguins, well, they won 7-3. So it was a good game at PPG Paints Arena, but it was Sidney Crosby's return game from his core muscle surgery where he put up 1 goal and 3 assists. That's how long it's been since we've seen the Minnesota Wild.
It's a whole new team, isn't it? I'm like trying to find
completely.
That team. So it's not going to be the same.
The only thing that I do remember that was basically the same is Marcus Foligno was raising hell in that game, and he is obviously one of the leaders still in the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, I'm trying to just pull up the roster, but, Hockey Reference likes to throw ads in my face.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, Parise and Suter, the obvious ones that are gone. Kirill Kaprizov is an obvious addition.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've had new goalies every year since, their team started. But who else was on this old team? Oh, Matt Bartkowski was over there. Kevin Fiala was their leading scorer. Eric Stahl's no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Zuccarello is still there, right?
Yeah. He is still there. Yes.
Yeah.
So the point is, there's been some overhaul in Minnesota since the last time we've played. It's been a while.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. And it's an interesting thing to see, especially now that they are when we played them then, they weren't the same. They were not as good of a team. Now they look like a house of fire. At least they did last season, kind of. Kirill Kaprizov put the world on his back, basically, and willed that team into being relevant, but also the cast of characters behind him were just as good and talented. So I hate when sorry if you heard this car screech outside. Someone who works here likes doing that a lot. Anyway, it's a much different team than what we had last time, than what we faced last time. So it's going to be an interesting matchup and should be fun. The Wild are a fun team on their own. Now it's a matter of facing up against them. And what are they, 6-3? They're pretty good right now.
They are. They're 6-3. And you saying they're a fun team, I mean, they never used to be. There was a long time where that team was make your eyes bleed boring. But the addition of Kirill Kaprizov really kind of jump-started that with a guy like Kevin Fiala, with the goaltending and Cam Talbot that they've been able to get. They're a team that has been put together by Billy Guerin, who obviously we talked about in the first segment, but they're a team that is exciting. They're a team that took Vegas to the brink in the first round last year, and they're a team that this year is expected to make a run to the playoffs at the very least, and possibly a little bit later into the playoffs. Now, like you mentioned, they're 6-3-0 on the season. Their last game was Tuesday, so they will not play they're not going to end up having a game between Tuesday's win and Saturday's matchup with the Penguins. Nice 3-day break for them. But in that game, they got a 5-4 overtime win against the Ottawa Senators, a game in which the game-winning goal in overtime was scored by Kirill Kaprizov. His first goal of the season. Before that, it was a little bit of a panic time in Minnesota because he would not been putting the puck in the net. He does have 8 points on the season, so he did have 6 assists going into that game, had a goal and assist in that game, but Minnesota fans were a little scared that their leading scorer from last year, 26 goals in 55 games last year, did not have a goal up until that performance.
Yeah, and you want to know what else Minnesota's loving right now? Their addition of Kalen Addison. You're very welcome.
Yeah.
You are very welcome.
Obviously, the Pittsburgh Penguins in that trade between getting Kalen Addison and a first-round pick, and I believe somebody else went to Minnesota as well in exchange for Jason Zucker. Galchenyuk, that's who it was. I forgot about him because he has been on 3 other teams since then.
Yeah.
But that trade obviously has kind of swayed in the favor of the Minnesota Wild. They have a really useful defenseman. Meanwhile, I mean, Jason Zucker hasn't been bad, and he's been better this season already. But you look at the price that you paid, and it was a little bit of an overpay there.
Yeah, and did they trade Galchenyuk, or did they just let him walk in free agency? Because
they just let him walk in free agency. He ended up going, I believe, to Toronto first, and now I believe he's back in Arizona.
Ottawa, traded by Ottawa to Carolina, traded by Carolina to Toronto, Signed as a free agent with the Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah. I said 3 teams, and I thought I was being a little exaggerated, but nope, four teams since he left Minnesota, and he was only there for like half a year.
Played 8 games in Ottawa, scored 1 goal, was a -6.
Yeah, Galchenyuk's career that could be a feature.
Yeah, and because he signed a PTO with Arizona, didn't he? This year?
Yeah.
Well, don't think he made it.
No. But back to this game. Obviously, the goaltending matchup between what, again, I would expect coming off of a long break, he's going to get back-to-back starts in Tristan Jarry against Cam Talbot. Cam Talbot has been okay for the Minnesota Wild so far this year. A 2.72 goals allowed average, a 905 save percentage, and he's 6-2 on the year. So he's done well enough to get wins for this Minnesota Wild team. But when you look at their roster and the Penguins roster for this matchup, it's not going to be a lot of high-flying names. Kirill Kaprizov's probably the top billing player there, the top billed superstar. And then other than that, it's going to be a test of depth. You look at the Penguins, they obviously have a little bit higher goals for per game and 3.25 against the Wild's 3.00, and also a better goals against per game, again, by about the same margin. So you're expecting this game to finish 4-3, 3-2. You hope that the Pittsburgh Penguins, with all these players out and with the depleted defense, are able to match up well with the Minnesota Wild, because even back in 2019, the question was, hey, this team is really deep. They're not really bad in any area, but they're also not extremely good in any area. I feel like they're at the same level, but a little bit better. Obviously, you have a guy in Kirill Kaprizov that is an elite goal scorer. That helps. But I feel like the rest of the team is at that same level where there's not really a gaping hole anywhere in that lineup. So you're just going to have to play well through all 4 lines, and that's, of course, what Mike Sullivan likes to do.
It's what he likes to do, and it's what this team is usually really good at. We always talk about the Bluger line always being one of the team's better lines, better units. They're not a top line. They're 3rd right now and could be 4th come full health, or still 3rd in some weird circumstances.
Full health is a joke that we tell each other ourselves.
Exactly. Or there's our top point scorers right now, which are Danton Heinen, who, no, he's not a top line guy, at least not in the grand scheme of things. I wouldn't think so.
He was practicing on the top line on Wednesday.
Yeah. It's just a matter of our depth always steps up, and we like rolling 4 lines. Mike Sullivan always has. It is what has been the key to success for us in the last few seasons. So if that continues to work, this shouldn't be any problem, but it's just a matter of getting it to work. And when you realize our 4th line at this point has become nameless gray faces in a way. I mean, they're not nameless. We know who they are, but it's Drew Brian Boyle, Drew O'Connor, who in the grand scheme of the NHL, nameless gray face, and
Sam
Lafferty, who, no thank you. Dom Simone is probably squeaking his way somewhere in this lineup because no one can stay healthy. It's just all of our depth.
Yeah.
Just that's it. Nothing else. Like, Gensel's out there, but he hasn't done jack yet. Kapanen's out there, also really hasn't done jack yet. Rust is hurt. Jeff Carter, while a top-ish line name, we acquired him to be a depth piece. It's not the same. So our forward core is interesting, but if we're able to continue to roll all 4 despite who the names are and who the faces are, no problem.
Now, I do have one question for you regarding the Penguins lineup before we move on to the next segment here, and that is, if you had to choose between Dom Simone and Sam Lafferty, who would you rather put in the lineup?
Dom Simone. I have more faith in him. Sure, he may not score, but he may not score and may not have the willingness to brawl a little bit, but I at least like his game more than I like Sam Lafferty's.
As of this moment, Sam Lafferty has drawn in instead of Dom Simone, but I agree with you. I'd rather see Dom Simone in the lineup than Sam Lafferty. I think he helps a little bit more on the offensive side, and I don't think Sam Lafferty has as much upside on the defensive side to try to counterbalance that. But we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to close out this episode with our shout-outs and call-outs. We'll be right back.